In this video we are going to be looking at fractions and decimals. A fraction or a decimal is a type of unit to explain a part of one whole. So if we're looking at something smaller than 1 or between two whole numbers, so it could be 1.5 or 2 and a little bit, then we use fractions and decimals to be more accurate in how much exactly we are looking at. So for example, if I'm going to draw a number line which starts at 0 but I've got 1 here, then we can use fractions and decimals to talk about all the values that are in between 0 and 1, because we can't use whole numbers for that, because 1 is our first whole number, and we need to use these fractions and decimals to talk about the values in between. Now that could be part of a chocolate bar, part of a banana, or it could be part of a group of people. So we're going to be looking at today tenths to start with. Okay, and I'm going to use some new themes to help me explain that. So I'm going to use this faceplate here to represent one whole. Okay, so this blue piece is one whole. Imagine that's one chocolate bar, or one class of children, or one piece of paper. Now, I might not need one whole piece of paper. I might be doing a piece of origami or making a card where I only need a part of that piece of paper. Now, if that piece of paper is split into equal parts, here I'm going to split it into 10 equal parts. So I'm just going to place them on top of that piece to show you that those 10 parts are worth the same as my one whole. Now these parts are obviously smaller than that blue plate was. Because there are 10 parts, because that one whole has been split into 10 parts, this part is not worth 0, but it's not worth 1 whole. It's worth a smaller amount. It's worth 1/10. And this is the fraction, but I can write the same thing as a decimal, which is 0.1. So each of these are worth 1/10. If I took 2 of them, they're now worth more than 1/10, but they're not yet worth 1 whole. There's 2 of them, so we say there are 2/10. Or we can write it as a decimal. We've got no whole numbers, and then we've got 2/10 there. And so forth and so on. We've got 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10, and then the tricky part comes along. When we've got 8/10, then 9/10, and our natural instinct wants us to say 10/10. Well, at this point we then need to exchange the 10/10 for 1 whole, and we have 1. And then we go on to 1.1 and 1.2. So here I still have my 1 whole, but this time I have got a part which is much smaller than my 10th. Here I've got these parts that are worth 100, because if I carried on and put these pieces on here, I would need 100 of them to cover the same area as this 1 whole. So when 1 whole has been split into 100 pieces, we call it 100th. Or as a decimal, I would call it 0.01, because this column is for ones, this column is for tenths, and this column is for hundredths there. Okay, so here I have 100. If I had 2, then it would be 200ths, and as a decimal I would do it as 0.02, all the way to 0.09, and then the next number in the sequence would be 10 hundredths is the same as 1/10, and it would go 0.1. And that's really important, knowing that 1/10 is the same as 10 100ths. Okay? So here I have 32 100ths. And I can partition that into 30 hundredths and 2 hundredths. I could partition it into a different way. I could say I've got 32 100ths, and instead of partitioning these as 30 hundredths, I could call them 3/10ths. So I could say I've got 3/10ths and 2 100ths. And what I've shown here is I've shown my understanding that I know that 30 hundredths is the same as 3/10ths, because 10 hundredths is 1/10, 20 hundredths is 2/10, so 30 hundredths is 3/10.